All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. Can't wait to get this one started because it's with one of my favorite people. I'm very happy to be joined by an old friend who I've wanted to have on for a bit, so I'm glad we were finally able to connect for this chat. Joining me from the great city of Detroit, Michigan, Mr. Troy Gregory. Troy, great to see you, my friend.
Great to see you as well. Cheers.
Excellent, man. I'm just so happy you're on the channel. We're gonna have a catch up. For the viewer who may not be familiar with Troy, Troy's played with basically every band on the planet, more or less. Let me throw some names of people you've toured with, recorded with, been a full-time member of in most of these cases. Prong, Flotsam and Jetsam, The Witches, Wasted Youth, Killing Joke. Swans, help me, the Dirtbombs, Nathaniel Mayer, Super Birthday, uh,
I'm in a city solution.
right, one of my
The
favorite
sound of
bands,
boundary.
tons of stuff, man, and we can probably do a 50-part series just on any one of those names we just mentioned. But first and foremost, I wanted to mention that you were a guest on the New York Hardcore Chronicles Live back in late 2021. No, I'm sorry, late 2022.
Yeah, it's the same. It's sooner than that.
Yeah, with my good friend Drew Stone, I actually came on that episode and chatted with you as well. And that episode goes through a lot of the history of many of the groups we just mentioned. It's a pretty thorough dive into where you came from and where you've been. So I'm going to link that in the video description. So if anyone wants a deep dive into uh, the decades preceding this conversation, definitely check that out. Because the main reason why I wanted to have you on is to kind of catch up on things since the time of that interview. I do know at the moment you're working on a new album, so I want to kind of start there and find out what you've been up to and what the greater picture of this next record looks like at this point.
Okay, yeah, since the thing with Drew Stone released, I think I already had 3 records I put out in October of 2022 when I did that interview. And I released 3 more the next month. And those 6 that I didn't promote at all, they're all online and stuff. And I'm very pleased with those albums. And they're Sand Dollar Castle, Heroically Versed in Complex Ecosystems, The Carnival Crowd, Magic Lantern, Frosted Lashes, The Anthropocene Scene, and Willow Ash Oak Juniper. And those records are just me playing everything. And also my other solo record, Zaviera, where I'm playing everything on that as well, and the Super Birthday Abracapocus record too. So those are my favorite records I've done. Obviously, you like the stuff you've done recently more so, right? And so I'm working on the record that's either going to be titled Wonderland Arcade or Penning Fractals and Melting Sand, which is another track on there. It might be too long, but so I'm recording that right now, and it's about 3/4 of the way done when I can find time to work on it. And I'm gonna be doing short visuals for each one, different mediums. Ones where I'm shooting kind of more live action footage. Other ones I'm doing 2D animation. Other ones 3D animation. I'd like to do a claymation one. Let's go buy a bunch of Play-Doh and get all Mr. Bruce Bickford on it. And so these visuals that they'll bring out other essence of it, because I like working with the visuals and music. And I've always used to work on things kind of separately like that, but not so much anymore. I always liked how Devo and the Residents and stuff like that could incorporate their art, other visual arts as well, music. So we were trying to get that together as well as work on a script to work on another film. And then trying to have time to hang out with my wife and the cats and take a walk, get in shape, enjoy this sweet swinging sphere.
Excellent, excellent. So what kind of timetable are you looking at for this next album to be released?
If time works out right, I utilize my time and don't screw it up enough. I hope to be done within 2 weeks of the record. But I'm going to actually try to get someone to put it out, because me as a label is not a good thing. So I'm going to try that just for a little bit and release a track or two. So hopefully I'll have a track like next month. I have one of the videos from at least one of it. If he's not interested in putting out this label, and if he has no one else interested, I'd rather than knock myself out trying to find a label, I'm just going to then put the record out a song at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And right, and then after that, I mean, then I probably won't try to ever get on a label ever again, and then just release the other 70 songs I wrote last over the year, and just release those one at a time, and have fun making them. Hope someone enjoys them. Hallelujah.
Excellent, excellent. And I want to make the point that you're easily one of the most prolific artists I know as far as releasing music. Certainly there's a very strong metal audience on this channel. So there are going to be people who will be watching this video because they know you from Prong or Flotsam and Jetsam. And, those were records that were on major labels, back when that mattered,
Right.
But ever since certainly since your departure from Prong in the early 90s, you've put out tons of records, whether it's under your own name or with projects like The Witches, or as a special guest, playing a few songs on a record, or an
Right.
occasional Crime in a City Solution. You were a full-time member for the era you were a part of, and you did a wonderful album with them a few years back. I mean, do you even know how many records you're on at this point? If you had to add up your full discography, what that would actually look like?
No, I don't. I thought about it before. There's tons of. I've got to get from Ben Blackwell. This because Dirtbombs, we've done tons of singles. When we would record our album, we'd also record a bunch of other extra tunes, and those were usually used for 45s, whether it was a tour 45 or whatever. Sometimes there were covers with an original one. Like there was one that came out of Suicide doing, I think it was Ghost Rider. I don't remember. Another one where we did like Sparks. We did 2 Sparks songs and everything. But so I mean, I don't know how many of those came out, to tell you the truth, of just those 45s and of all the LPs. And then there's ones in the last 10, 15 years. There's ones I played on that just came out online. A lot of Detroit artists and stuff. The Blind Doctors, I played on one of their tracks, Dear Darkness and everything. But Medusa Cyclone, then it was like this Linda Mandolin played on one of her things too. I can't keep track. It sounds really stupid. But I mean, I can get pretty close to what records I played on. It's just that it's those like kind of rare kind of 1 or 2 singles and kind of all over the place things I'm not quite sure of.
Right, right. Well, one collaboration I certainly want to mention because it's nearing the finish line finally after many years, is the one that we're doing with quite a few other people. It started around 2017, initially with my friend Roger Ebner, who's a saxophonist for Pigface. He and I thought of an idea. Let's get a bunch of people together, do a song, and then we'll give the proceeds to dog rescue charities. That's the plan. And then we made a wish list of musicians, and everybody we contacted, most people we contacted, schedule permitting, said yes, they'll do it. So it became a 10-person band over the years with different people adding things to it. There are 4 drummers on the track, one of whom is your past constituent, Ted Parsons from Prong. Uh, so we have the track done and dusted, and you are doing a remix of the track as part of
Yes.
what has now become an EP with other, there's going to be at least 2 remixes, Martin King from Test Department and Dog Tablets doing the other one. But yeah, you're part of that project. And first of all, thank you for being a part of
Thank
that.
thank you
Uh,
for asking me.
Yeah, man, it's always great working with you. We've done some things in the past as well, and this project I'm really psyched about because we've got people from all over the world. Greta Brinkman, who was in Moby's band for many years, and L7, she's on bass, and we have another bass player, Karen Righeimer from Chicago. So it's like this big melting pot of music. Um, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's probably the first time you and Ted have been on something together since the early demos for what became Cleansing, right? Which Raven
Right.
actually, eventually put on the album. So that would have been what, 93? So it's been
Oh no, earlier than that, 90, yeah, end of 92. I thought I left the band, I think, God, me with years here. I believe it was, yeah, 92.
90.
It was because it was the end of that tour around fall. I'm pretty sure that was then. Yeah, the last show I played with them, I think, was this with Prong. It might have been Poughkeepsie. Was it some place upstate
The
in New
chance,
York?
was it the
I don't
chance?
remember. I don't know. It was a dive. We over toured, that record. We shouldn't have done that last tour. It might have even probably stayed in the band. Who knows? But it was like that very last show. It was a weird tour. It was called the Magical Misery Tour, appropriately. And when all the steam got let off, everyone got really blasted. Oh my God. I mean, Tommy was playing like China Grove for the Doobie Brothers on stage. I think we played like 5 minutes of it, made up some stupid lyrics. But I remember at one point Ted leaving the stage and someone else getting on drums, and then around sound check, I could still see Ted came out on stage in his underwear. We always played in his underwear anyway, but he's got this big fish, wooden fish necklace on. He found backstage, and he's just running on the stage like that, and I could see it in my head. It's so so there. Yeah, that was the last time. Yeah, that was the last show I played with them, and the last time I talked to him was on the phone when I was in Oslo with the Dirtbombs. And he couldn't come out, but it was nice to speak with him. And Tommy Victor, I just saw him only a few months ago when he was in town, and got speaking with Away from Voivod too. We talked about how we jammed ages ago with me, him, and Piggy. We played Great Deceiver from King Crimson and Ziggy Stardust. And so we talked about the idea floating around of actually perhaps doing a project together at some point, which I would love to work with Away. That'd be great. Oh, Mike Michel, sorry. Again.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
just so used to calling them by their when they were going by their nicknames first.
yeah, he's a cool guy. I've interviewed him
Yeah.
a couple of times, and Snake as well. And I know Dan, what do they call him? Chewy, the
Yeah,
current here. He's always very accessible. I think he does the social media, or has done it in the past. I don't know if he's currently doing it for the band, but always a cool band to see, always a cool bunch of people. And
yeah,
you
nice
know,
guys.
Away, I can see you and Away doing something together because he's got the visual mind as well, in addition to the musical side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what we would do if we get around to it. But it was brought up, and he brought it up, so it's his fault.
Awesome. There were a couple of key events that happened since the Drew Stone episode. Um, and one of the purposes of the channel that I have now is I like to honor people who sadly have gone upstairs, who've left us for, any number of reasons. And I think that's important. I think it's important to document people's time here and what they contributed musically. And I know certainly other places do that as well, but I have a commitment to doing that. Um, and there were two notable losses from your musical history that occurred in recent times. Um, the first being Geordie from Killing Joke. And I'll preface it by saying it's kind of a weird one for me with Geordie because um, a lot of discussion about Killing Joke online seems to always be prefaced with the loss of Geordie. And while I understand that, I also understand, there are certain people who need to not be reminded of that and go off and have their time to remember. And, there are certain members of Killing Joke who are more public facing than others, and they kind of get the brunt of that. So I want to be mindful of that, but I don't want to be remiss in bringing it up because you toured with Killing Joke in '96 for the Democracy album. And what's significant, particularly with Geordie, is Geordie was the one who brought you into the band for that tour. So I did want to bring it up. And depending on what you're willing to share about Geordie, I did want to ask you, um, what do you think from your experiences made Geordie um, the unique individual musically and otherwise that he clearly was? What made him this character, this personality that obviously is very revered and will be very much missed moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting because knew him as obviously first as a fan, and being in the Killing Joke and going seeing them play and how accessible they are, and he was always cool to me. And that's the one thing, the way he was backstage when I met him around that time would be how he was when I was in the band backstage. It's that persona seemed to always be there again. But the thing is I've known him for such a short time, not like people who've been in a band with him, forever, or his family, I don't have that closeness. I still feel strange about even kind of contacting anyone from his family for even just to offer condolences, because I don't know, I'm awkward with condolences. I'm never quite good at it. I think I was telling you I was looking for ways to have to say of condolences that doesn't toss someone his head off. Yeah, he was like it's really funny. So Source is a fan, and then like when he was living in Michigan, I mean, which was just insane. It was like, what the hell? When my wife said, yeah, the guitar player from Killing Joke was in the bar. I'm like, what? How does that happen? And then then of course so and my wife and I became friends with him and his wife and had dinner with them. And when we had dinner, he was playing me stuff from Democracy. Then oddly enough, I just get this call. What are you doing next week? You can't do the tour. It's funny, he asked me to play, and he's never heard me play before. As far as I know, I got asked and he never heard me play. And he came over and we jammed with my brother. Todd was going to do the tour on the drums because they wasn't sure if Jeff Dugmore was going to be available, and he wasn't last minute, which was bittersweet for my brother and me. But I mean, I had Geordie in my basement playing. Again, it's still at that point. It's that kind of thing of just someone I've only known through interviews and seen him playing on stage and stuff like that. So you don't really know him at all. And but so yeah, doing the tour was great. When Jazz was getting on me when I first got there and stuff, Geordie was one telling him to shut up and trusted the fact that I would get this all down. But that was the special time with Geordie, was that 2 weeks of rehearsing in England, because him and I were staying at Youth's place. And I don't know if Youth was working with Paul McCartney or Heather Nova, but like it was us there. So we would get up in the morning and stay up all night drinking tea and eating cookies, biscuits, and smoking, and just and then we'd always go to this after rehearsals to this little restaurant around town, a curry place that he loved, and it was fantastic. And we just talk about things. He didn't always really like talking about music, but when you get him talking about the things he liked when he was young, like stuff like the Sensationalist Harvey Band. He was talking about when he met Zal Clemenson, and he's like, "Oh, I hate you, geezer," that type of thing. I think I said as well. He reminded me of something like Peter O'Toole, almost in a way. It was some film that Peter O'Toole saw. Is this? But saying he was always nice to me. Even and I was and he picked up on that time too. I was still very naive, still very troubled, still very stupid in a lot of ways. And he picked up on that, and rather than just kind of knock me on that, was more give me advice, helpful, and stuff like that. And of course, playing with them was just a whole other bag. It was just those chords. There's so much tonality in there, and for a bass player to kind of go, "Oh, I can do this and do this." So I got to the point where eventually I was playing all the songs exactly how they were, which I usually do when I start with something, but then start doing what I would do if I wrote that. I know some people say it's sacrilegious, but oh well. I think it makes the playing better. But that was just I started picking up his guitar and playing that, just the feedback coming from that hollow body
Right.
was quite incredible. So yeah, and then after the tour, just didn't really. I mean, I run into him every like 4 or 5 years. The time I'm playing with the Volbeats in New York, and it turned out someone goes, "Oh, Killing Joke's playing tonight." I was like, "What?" And Ted Parsons happened to be playing drums, and hung out with them all night. And Al Kizzies and Raven. And to see Raven the last time I saw him live too. And yeah, and then I didn't. So I barely would see Jordy, and I always call his ex-wife to see if we can get in for tickets because I can't ever get a hold of him and everything. I didn't want to annoy her. She's a friend. She's a wonderful person. I just said, again, I always felt intrusive. You know what I mean? Maybe part of me still felt there's just that fan and everything. And yeah, and so then when they were Killing Joke was in Detroit with opening for Tool, and Laura and I got went on the list and watched the show, and then when we were walking around after their set, we saw Jordy. Kind of weird at this huge arena, and so he took us out on the bus, and we sat all night talking for a bit. Again, I started talking about music, and he's, I don't want to talk shop. I don't want to talk shop. And he loved seeing Laura and talking with her, and then a bunch of his other even closer friends showed up, and his wife too, and he moved off with them. So talked to youth and jazz for a bit, and that was it. That was the last time I saw Jordy. Again, you never know unless. So there was this recently. There's been so many people passed away, and it's just always been that just so sudden there and gone, and again finding out about it, scrolling on the internet, and it's like, oh shit, all these pictures of Jordy, what the fuck, and then I usually get something from Mike Alonso. Michael will send me, oh man, this sucks, or my brother and everything. So yeah, and then not too long after that, recently, Rodriguez, who I played with too, and was gonna go visit him in the hospital, and then or when he was home, but also I didn't want to intrude again with the family,
Yeah. It's
stuff. We were friends and I played with them, but I'm just, it's a different thing when someone's family or close friends.
it's a weird thing. I've had that experience myself. It's an awkward, it can be an awkward scenario. Certainly when it's sudden, if something happens suddenly like that, it's like you don't want to be the extra person to call the family. Like they've probably had enough calls that day. You don't want to be 101 call, and then
Yeah,
somebody's, when the ending is known or anticipated, then it's like you don't want to be taking away from the time that they, would have with, yeah, I get it, man. It's
yeah.
always a
It's been, so I feel for them more than anything. I said, like, my father-in-law passed away earlier this year. There was no funeral or nothing. It was just kind of like, okay, so it's just you almost just kind of get used to, well, it's just there and it's gone, and that you yourself will be that. Too many nights of contemplating eternity and oblivion, which is why very much this whole next record is almost about. Um, that it's just like, but if anything, just make me just appreciate, man, the last time you see somebody, it might be the last time you see them, what I mean? And that whole thing of, I sometimes take a little over the top, people I really care about, because then it's just like, I have to tell them every day, I love you, I love you. I want you to know that. And you don't want to leave anything unsaid. But it's like I said, that's a sobering thought. You have more time behind you than I had. So I just don't waste any bullshit. No pissed off at anyone or getting up, just garbage stuff. That's another thing too, is this going through your head and all the things you've learned throughout your life, where that you realize so much has just been horseshit when you find etymology of things too. Just, oh God, that was nothing. Why do I even say that? Why do I even think that?
yeah.
So the whole idea of, again, of which consistently do, like, just deconstruct again, try to keep the amount of bullshit down to hopefully nothing from what I think, what comes out of my mouth, and what I allowed myself to hear as well, and be involved with, and again, that thing of the people that you meet along the lines, he's on down the road are part of that as well, and enrichment. I've always been spent a lot of times by myself. And so I'm so used to people in a lot of ways, being just kind of transient in their lives, only there for a short time, really. It's kind of how it's always kind of been since I was a kid, really. But I miss Jordy, and yeah, he was, no one had played like him. But again, I think about the people who are very, very, very close to them, and they miss a lot more. I'm sure that doesn't ever leave them and everything. So yeah, I mean, Jazz is doing some tour off and around, and I read a quote from Jazz though. What he said about Jordy after he died, he said something like he thought Jordy, he didn't think Jordy was gonna die. He thought he was indestructible.
Mm.
And someone might take that statement as being ridiculous, but you can, you kind of almost agree. I mean, not completely indestructible, but it's yeah. I'm glad I got to know him, and then getting to work with him too musically. Fuck yeah, which was I'd rather do too. I mean, like Paul McCartney, I'd rather play with Paul McCartney than hang out with him. Nothing wrong with maybe hanging out with him. I mean, I don't know how you'd be if you hung out with him. You might be all right, have a laugh. But at the same time, I'd rather play with the guy.
Right.
So
Well,
good. I do Beatle imitations.
I mean, with Jordy, you mentioned the tour when they had Ted on drums and Raven back on bass. That was the first tour I saw of Killing Joke live. I've seen them many times since. But what struck me I saw them out in LA at the El Rey Theater. And what really struck me about them live, and I
Mhm.
think you'll understand what I mean, there was an energy with Jordy that I've never seen with another musician. And you know, Jazz comes out, and the eyes are out to here, and he's got,
Ah,
the whole thing, and
you're gonna die tonight, maybe.
exactly. And then there's Raven, he's got the war paint on. He looks like he's gonna break you in half, and he probably would under some circumstances. So they're all menacing and aggro. And then there's Jordy who's just swaying and destroying the audience. Like for me, I just watched Jordy the whole time. And you're just like, how what he was a force. Jordy was a force. He didn't have to be, not suggesting Jazz and Raven had to play it up to be who they were, but Jordy didn't have to do any of that. He just stood there and played and did his thing.
Yeah, just go. It's interesting because he that's the thing I always used to get, especially when I was younger. You got horrible stage presence, and then it just got to be I'm just gonna play the music and not even worry about that. Then all of a sudden it's moving around on the stage, which I don't really find endearing. I'd watch the show. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Jumping around like a freaking idiot. But then like you see like Jordy or Ivy Warshish, from the Cramps, just standing there
Mhm.
and just have this presence. It was interesting. I mean, I picked that up on when I got into Killing Joke. That was not just the guitar sound was unique or the choice of notes and chords, and yeah, it was the way it was executed and the way it was performed in a live situation.
Yeah,
And but yeah, no one liked that cat. And yeah, it was a pleasure to know him. Definitely was. And Laura feels the same way. It was just I'm sure it's just now I'm getting all tongue tied a little bit, but like yeah, but with him and Rodriguez and Nathaniel Mayer. I played with Laura road managed that tour. We were on tour with the Black Keys.
Mm.
We were opening for them, and those guys actually chipped in an extra like $500 a night for us for a tour float, which they didn't have to do. So if anybody, what's one thing I'll always with those Patrick and Dan, I would just always thank them for because that was so kind of them. And we did a record too with Dan, played guitar on too with Nate. He joined us on stage before. But Nate on that tour, Laura was the road manager, and we got real close with Nate on that tour. And he was a great guy. And I was never sitting around with him too. And we were in Philadelphia. Someone had to do something, whatever. We're basically just sitting in the van, just waiting. And gates open, and we started singing stylistic songs together. And I don't know. It just was one of those. When you talk about it, it seems kind of silly, but for me, it was like this little nice, lazy afternoon on the tour, just sitting in the van and yeah, singing stylistic tunes with Nathaniel Mayer. It was so funny though. It's like we were at the just share this one story. We were at the border in Canada, and Nate's really hungry, and Laura's got to do, the money type stuff. She's got to go deal with, she's a road manager, so she's got to make sure everything for going over the border is cool. And then she turns around to Matt Smith, and she's like, "Watch him. Like, you got one job, watch him." Because I went with Laura, and then we come back and see Matt. Where's Nate? He's like, I don't know. What? He's like, "You had one job," and all of a sudden we see him. Because Nate was really hungry. He's like, "I want to get myself something to eat." And all of a sudden we see him, and he walked over the border back in between both on both sides of the Canadian and American sides, but just kind of, you're not supposed to do that. These guys are these armed guards, and he's still like in his stage clothes from the night before that he slept in, this like white got a velvet suit with gold things on it, but he's got this big sandwich, and he's a tiny guy. The sandwich was bigger than him, walking by them like this hat on, and just seeing these confused guys, these guns, like what do we do here? And he's walking right through them. It was really, it was a beautiful image. He was a great guy too. It's yeah.
Well, I won't keep you in this dark alley for much longer, but I did want to bring up Rodriguez a bit more because for the viewer who doesn't know Sixto Rodriguez, I would recommend watching a film called Searching for Sugar Man, which, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful music documentaries ever produced. It's an amazing story, and I was fascinated with the idea of this guy finding success so many years after he thought he didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I had an infatuation with his story anyway. Then I find out you actually played with Rodriguez. Um, and I wanted to get into that a little bit with you because I'm just so fascinated that that connection happened. So how did that actually come to be where you were working with him for a bit?
When I left Prong and moved back to Detroit, and I was doing a band with my brother, we used to play at this place called Alvin's in the Cass Corridor in Detroit. And I met him then, and he was always been hanging out. And then a friend of mine pointed out, the Cold Fact record and everything. It's, oh, great. Hearing how good that stuff was. Matt Smith, who I was my first band with Mike Alonso when I was 11. He started playing more shows with Rodriguez too around town and everything. So it's like, I filled in on bass for a couple shows. Well, actually, we did like 6 sets one night at the whole Miami, and it was great. Well, all of a sudden, the thing with Africa happened. What happened in a documentary, and then I played with them again, Ann Arbor Blues Folk Festival, and then it was just like going over his house, and sit around his kitchen table, and he has his guitar, and he always hand it to you, play me what you got, play me something new. So it was always great to play him new songs I'd be working on. I'm not so sure about it, and I play for him. Oh, that's a good one. That was really nice. And actually, just this past weekend, we did it was a year anniversary of his passing, and so there was a bunch of people got together and played. And I was asked to play Sugar Man and Crucify Your Mind. And then I also played a song of mine called A Book to Read in a Tree. That was one of the songs I played for him that he liked. It's on one of my records. And then, yeah, it was like then during the Thanos snap, there was a thing we were supposed to be filming for this theater in Philadelphia or something. All these different artists like James Taylor or something on it. And so he had me being a music director. So I had Mike Alonso on drums and Matt Lanou on guitar, who played in Super Birthday. And they, but because we were wearing the masks in them, they didn't air it. We didn't want him to get sick, and and we were wearing a mask, didn't want each other sick. It was before the vaccines and stuff. So yeah, they never aired it and stuff. But at the rehearsals, he would have me singing everything. wasn't doing as well then. He was losing his sight, was pretty much gone by then too. And he's in over the winter. So yeah, Troy, you sing it. And so that yeah, so I got asked to do the tour with them when he played like Coachella, but I couldn't do it at the time, which I was doing something else. And that's one thing I should point out. I mentioned all these bands I've been in. I've had equal amount of jobs. You know, it's absolutely true. And usually, like, 'cause even like right now, I've got a couple. I'm working at a market, the produce section. I'm bartending for the Detroit City Football Club and our soccer team here. I do that with Laura. I also try to pick up some freelance video editing work. I'd love to get some film scoring work more, which I love film scoring. And I still give a guitar lesson or two, a bass lesson and everything. And and then try to, do a movie and do a record. And have a band. But it's like again, all those other bands, I mean, that's the thing, all the different jobs I've had, from about 5 different record stores, bookstores, graphic design, I learned to do tile work, put in a jewelry store, marble tile and stuff like that before. I couldn't stand that. With mortgage company, going through appraisals, lovely. Yeah, just coffee barista. Worked for the main art theater on and off. That was really good, especially when the Dirtbombs are touring. I could always come back to my job there, and I did everything there from clean up vomit, making popcorn, to building the movie and adding the trailers and stuff like that, changing the lights, and I enjoyed it there. That place just got torn down. So as I say this, I've always, this is something when I was teaching at the school rock, of letting certain students know that when I was touring and doing this band and type thing, I was also coming back right back home and going to a job and doing work. Because as you know, lots of times you don't, depending on the group. I mean, the Dirtbombs, we do fine because we wouldn't bring out any crew and we wouldn't take any unnecessary stuff, and we would do that. And in the record label, we would pay for our own flights, and we would get that reimbursed by after the first week of gigs. So you can actually make something, at least, for a few months. But like when I was it's interesting, like when I was in Prong or Flotsam and Jetsam, what a lot of people think, because those were the 2 bands I was in, was on major labels. The only 2 bands I was in was on major label, I believe. What I played on, and they spent so much money on the albums. And when you're on tour, and there was a big road crew, and there was the bus and his van and stuff like that, so you weren't getting your per diem. There's nothing to save. And I just find guys that's, oh, come on, you made money from that. I'm like, what? Pay for your apartment, that's great, and that's wonderful, and keeping the band. But yeah, if you're not doing it, there was nothing there. I didn't get in when those bands got their their signing bonuses, and everything. So you work, and I have no trouble with that. I mean, obviously, this is the guy from Detroit saying I have no trouble working, but yeah, I mean, it's being able to do all those groups and stuff like that too. I also needed to do other work, and I just to become realistic about it. That seems always to be something that never really kind of gets mentioned. The other jobs that musicians were really doing. I had a great conversation with Jonathan Richmond about that once. I opened up for him once, and it was funny because I was supposed to open up for him just an acoustic one year, and then the day of the show, I got told that he doesn't want to open an act. So I was like, oh, okay. A year later, he comes back, and I got asked again. I'm like, well, I'm just waiting for the last minute to get told not to. And I played my set, and I finished my songs, and he was on the side of the stage, and he comes up and goes, hey, man, those are your songs? I said, yeah. He goes, you wrote all those? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, you can stick around? I said, yeah. And we sat around and talked, and it was super nice. I lyrically, Jonathan Richmond, and he's just freaking brilliant. He's one of my favorite lyricists. Jonathan Richmond, Ron Mayle from Sparks, too, just brilliant lyricist. Alan Vega. Yeah, there's a lot of those folks I like. Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a great point about the reality of doing music. I was talking to someone not too long ago, and I said something on the lines of, if I quit all my like real work, the stuff that actually pays me,
Mhm.
and just lived on, like, let's say I quit all my other stuff today, and I get a lump sum payment of all the money I've ever made as a musician, ever, counting money from gigs, counting royalties, counting, any kind of record sales, Spotify, whatever. Add it
Right.
all, I would probably be able to live for about 8 months.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not always there, unless you have some sort of a fluke novelty hit or whatever it is. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to go about it. It's my own fault too. At the same time, I've never been financially driven when it comes to music. Never, 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 never. Only becomes a thing now in the later years because, well, I don't want my wife to have to work anymore. It'd be really nice that if I could get that. Also, at the same time, you're constantly changing through life. I'm a completely different person who I was freaking 20 years ago, even. That's why it's sometimes weird even meeting people from your past because they feel that you're still that person, and aspects are, but other things, oh my God. I mean, if you put me in a room with me when I was freaking 40, if you put 40-year-old me in a room, I'm gonna slap him silly. I'm just like, listen, motherfucker, I'll tell you some shit. And that type of stuff. So it's even the same thing musically because back went back kind of studying Arnold Schoenberg and all that stuff again, and back to practicing, trying to take music somewhere else interesting, and I would love for me if I could go two things I would just love to do the rest of my life is put out records, make films, and score movies. That's the job I want. I don't care if I won the freaking lottery and I got a couple hundred million from the Mega Millions. I still want to do those things. You know what I mean? If any, it was funny because I was in a band and we all played the lottery tickets. It was one of the drummers, Pat Bantano and Dirtbombs, and everyone was saying if we won, what they would do. He goes, "Well, I'm leaving the tour right then." He goes, "I'll just get up and leave. I'm going home." So I was like, "Great." Yeah, we were thinking, "Oh, we'd get a tour bus. They'll finish the tour." No, you're just gonna leave. Whatever. Really nice, but yeah. I mean, there you go. You reap what you sow.
Yeah. Mm.
Reap the wild wind.
I just thought of someone else to mention who's gone away. It's been an odd year. Um, Damo Suzuki from Cannes.
Yeah,
And you worked with
Damo.
Damo as well, yeah. So
That was yeah, that was a gig with him, man, too. That sucks. Yeah, he was cool. It was like I was recording at Jim Diamond's and the shows at Detroit Contemporary, and I was asked to play cello. And so I ran there, and it was the last person I got told, go up in the room. He's got everyone up there. So Mick Collins, who played in the Dirtbombs, he was playing too, Matt Smith, um, Outrageous Sherry and everything. The Immigrant Sons guys, Joel Peterson and stuff. There was a bunch of us there, and anyway, so I get up in this top room, and Damo's on the floor, like as it just like Rachel Ghoul or something. He said everyone's around him, it's Guru, and he gave everyone a number, and he did this whole thing. That room was going to go out one by one. You call the number. And right when I showed up, and I'm sorry, I'm late. I got to he turns and goes, you won number 13. And I'm like, I was born on the 13th. And he goes, yeah. There we go. So, anyways, everyone goes one by one out on the stage. And the way this dressing room thing was, it was like elevated so we can look down on the stage.
mhm.
And one by one, people out there and they're starting to play. So it got to just me and Damo, the last two people. And we're watching, and he's like, oh, that sounds so great. And all of a sudden he listens to me, he goes, number 13? Like, get her up. And went down there, and then he came down. It was fantastic. We played 2-hour sets and all improvised. I think we did bits of Mother Sky, but it was supposed to be recorded, and the guy, the guy who was supposed to record it screwed up or something the night, and it didn't get recorded. It's a shame, but yeah, I mean, get to play Damo Suzuki. I mean, for a while there, when Holger Azuke was still about the beginning of the kind of internet, he was doing like a kind of play Exquisite Corpse type thing on his website, and I started getting involved in that. Yeah, what a great band. Jackie leads it too, just one of the greatest drummers ever. Fantastic. It's just I hate making these statements. Greatest ever. I mean, obviously, it's there's a lot of people who have played drums, and it's been centuries. But I mean, I'm aware of. But yeah, that's how did Damo die? I don't remember.
I
I don't
I
even, it's weird too when I hear some die, don't really just for some reason I don't have that. Well, how? I don't, I mean, I'm curious, but like when someone says, so and so died, they're like, oh my God, like, what did they do? Well, they were born and then they lived, I mean, but obviously, if it's something horrible, like an accident or a murder or something, that kind of
I,
thing.
I I don't know. I don't recall hearing any details about that actually. I mean, and I don't know this is the case at all, but certainly the guys in Cannes were not young, you
No,
know.
no. No, even thinking when they started, I think Ermin Schmidt was already in his 40s, maybe. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. And also condolences to your friend from Great White,
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Jack Russell. That's his
Yeah.
name, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been on the channel and great guy. That happened just this evening and
I'm
um
sorry to hear that, man.
yeah, he was a good one, man, you know. I'm still trying to kind of work it out, because it happened relatively um soon before we got together for this and he's on the channel and I'm so grateful for that, because I've talked to him over the years and he does publish an autobiography, so certain things aren't big secrets, but there were ups and downs with him, and the last time I talked to him prior to this interview on the channel, he was going through a rough time. He had a lot of traumas to work through, and wasn't him in a good place. Then we reconnected for the channel in February, and he was doing well. He was positive. He put out a killer album this year called Medusa, which is just a great Stonesy rock record. He did it with Tracy Guns from LA Guns.
Well,
But
I've met that guy before, a long time ago.
yeah, it sounds nothing like you'd expect from the singer from Great White and the guitar player from LA Guns. I'll send it to you. I think you would dig it.
Okay.
Um, so he was in a good place, and we were talking about doing some stuff together actually in the future. Then he got ill, and here we are. But yeah, man, that's what it is, and that's why I love doing this channel. I would never ever want to suggest ill on anybody. I've spoken to on the channel, but I've done almost 100 interviews at this point. I mean the chances are high, you know, as the years move on, not everyone who's been on a channel is going to be here in 5, 10 years.
Yeah, hopefully I am. It's, it's,
I
it's,
hope so
it's,
too.
it's interesting though. I went to, a year ago, I was at the dentist, and the dentist kind of stops in my mouth like, the fuck. And then they're like, oh, then they go to a specialist. And they seemed concerned and worried something wrong with my tongue. And it was about a month and a half before I can get in. And doctor said, for that month and a half, I'm considering that I have maybe cancer or something. I mean, I chain smoked for years. I'm doing this vape thing now, but like, so it's just that feeling going through your head and stuff and making you reevaluate things or again type of stuff. And again, it's just like again, it's saying this makes it sound like, oh, but I went, this crisis, that crisis. If anything, it's accepting and acknowledging this natural fact, you're gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
And that you're breathing now. Again, that's like, well, you're not sure really feel like there's one thing about reality, and you might be in the okay, yeah, this and that, regardless of which, there's some sort of observer experiencing something, which I for some sort of reasons or whatever, and just enjoying it, just realize I know just all the times that just things that silly things upset about or just garbage that craziness that you put yourself through all the times I just wasted sitting in a bar and getting drunk moaning about this the world and everything, but then again not being all like, oh well, just having regrets about it, what I mean, because then that they could have, would have, should have, sort of just going to make you fucking crazy. So
Mm.
then it's just like none of it really so much with music, just other things in life. um so it's maybe it has affected me more so, and with music and with film and stuff. I really want to connect more with people. And even like with friends. Really, if I'm not working, I'm only really hang out with, or even hang out with anyone who if I'm working with them. I'm no longer in a band with them. I don't really see them. It just works out that way because I'm usually trying to spend time with my wife, and then
Right.
things I work on by myself, and then next thing you got that going on. So just trying to find time, but that's it's just but there's so many friends and family members even because they all live so far away and stuff. And my father's been going in a hospital a lot, and so getting together and seeing my brother and my sister and being to hang with my mom and dad, is really nice. And then sitting and call a friend, which I'm bad. I'm bad at correspondences. Other people I've known through life, I never keep anyone's numbers or anyone's addresses. And I said, I think I bet it comes from the fact of, when I was a kid, I got really way into music, and it wasn't a lot of kids got really into it. I mean, we're talking about 2 or 3 years old, already the Monkees, and the Beatles, and, Archie's Power of the Raiders, and stuff. And, not a lot of kids in it, but it seems like every time I had a friend, they moved away. Like the kindergarten friend moved away, the first grade kid moved away, the second grade kid, the third grade kid. Then it went on and on until then I moved away, and then my family moved from Detroit up to Holly, and then just these people just don't keep in touch with them. One guy, a drummer I played with, Paul Ferrante from Holly, he was in a band I was in called Criminal. He was in a band now called Eyelids. They work with what's his name, Peter Buck from
Oh, okay.
REM.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Paul he also played with the guys on Poison Idea. He had a band called the Nervous Christians, and I think he also worked with Janet Weiss, Sleater Kinney,
Sure.
and there's some. Yeah, Paul still plays, and he was actually a guy that met up when I moved to Holly and stuff, and which sucked. It was ninth grade, and right after I graduated, and I was moving to LA and going to Musicians Institute, which was great. I to study studio stuff with Tommy Tedesco, jazz with Joe Pass, bass with Jeff Berlin. It's pretty fucking cool. The guy for Harmony and Theory was this guy Carl Schroeder. He used to play piano for Sarah Vaughan and Mel Torme, and it's great theory classes. Very interesting guy too. And my guy for scoring for film and TV was a guy named Carl Cedar. He used to do the music for the show Knight Rider. He was the music supervisor for
Oh,
Knight Rider.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
That's
that was a good time going to Musicians Institute there. It was 1986, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
mm. Well, we've talked about this before, how um, because of the eclectic nature of your history and the artists you've worked with, you're represented in some kind of surreal ways sometimes, like um, I remember I read a news item when you had joined Crime in a City Solution. It was on no names mentioned, but it was on a major like music news site. And they said, something on the lines of, Crime and the City Solution have enlisted former Swans bassist Troy Gregory. And then, if it's like Blabbermouth or something, it'll be, Flotsam and Jetsam Prong, Troy Gregory. But then out in Detroit, you're playing with people who have nothing to do with any of that. So, I mean, do you have any perspective, thoughts on that? How, does the perception of your history make you scratch your head sometimes, or are you somebody who just kind of does what you do and you don't kind of pay much attention to how the public views what you're doing, or things along those lines?
Yeah, that the second thing, really. I mean, it's my problem is always I sometimes don't notice, forget that anyone's even noticing or watching or listening. You know what I mean? That was something even like with Flotsam and going and doing stuff like MTV and stuff like that. I didn't put myself in a mode to be professional with that. I just found it so ridiculous. Um, no, I just again, it's just I never really had because I got into music at such an early age. I never really got into a specific genre ever. There was never one genre I really just like. It's all that, and I'm gonna act that way, dress that way, get into whatever all the accoutrements with that. But so yeah, because starting with like those Saturday morning television stuff, Actually, my mom says one of the first things I started singing was the Batman. Na 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 na. So it's a nice little chromatic line. Um, but there was, yeah, you had like all those TV shows on in the early '60s, late '70s, all trying to do rock and roll stuff. You had Archie's, you know, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids. Everyone had a band. Charlie Chan and Charlie Chan Clan, Lance Out Lincoln, Evolution Revolution. There was so I love that. So they had all this rock and roll music, and then there was the Monkees, you know, with them, and then you know also the Beatles, and the Beatles just broke up, so they're all in the news and everything like that. My dad loved playing them too, and Dad loved playing the Clockwork Orange soundtrack, which we absolutely loved.
Yeah.
Man La Mancha soundtrack. And then Mom's records, all her Motown records, and Bobby Rydell and Ricky Nelson and stuff like that. And then my uncle passed away at a very young age, mowing lawns in the most polluted part of River Rouge, Detroit area. Um, and he left this airline guitar and his records, which are like, you know, Chuck Berry's, Safari's, Duane Eddy, and everything. So you know, Hendrix. So we had those records, and then a stereo tape, but we had 33, 45, and 16, 33, 45, and 78. So every record got played at every speed, which is amazing. I think I always say if you play the Nothing But Heartaches 45 from the Supremes, if you played at 33, it sounds like Curtis Mayfield. But so you know, I had all that, you know, and then way into then got into the Beatles and everything like this. But it also it blended in with the other stuff I was into around that time, you know, Godzilla and Ghidorah, you know, and Spider-Man and Doctor Doom, you know, Lon Chaney and Christopher Lee, whatever. And so it was all in with that. And then Kiss comes along. So, you know, Taylor made for it already in rock and roll, comic books, and horror. But the thing is, getting on the Kiss, so it's about third or fourth grade. So it was it was just after Dress to Kill. And that I started buying all those magazines that they were in, and they would do things on other artists. So and I'd read it cover to cover, you know. So I'd read about John Cale or something, you know, and but then you'd see the records in the record stores and stuff like that, and you'd find out who's Brian Ferry, you know, and stuff like that. So and then you know, watching all the shows like you know, obviously American Bandstand and Soul Train, but also Bert Sugarman's Minute Special, Don Kirshner's rock concert, and because we could get Canadian stations, we were getting a lot of British stuff. There's Twiggy's Jukebox, which is show like Alex Harvey and Thin Lizzy and stuff, and which was a really cool show. And then we'd pick up just all these different, you know, way before MTV and stuff. And it was, you know, and then to get the TV book and to see who's going to be on Saturday Night Live. I remember looking and seeing Fear. Obviously, this is years later in the early '80s with the host Donald Pleasance. But that was always the thing. I remember like when I was really young, seeing like the Alice Cooper was going to be on the Snoop Sisters with Helen Hayes, and begging my parents, please let me step to see Alice Cooper, who my dad would call Alice Cooper, of course. And but yeah, that was through that, you know, and then just being waved. That's all of a sudden, then you know, Kiss isn't putting out as many great records. I always love when people say, "No, you didn't have that album." I'm like, "Well, I only got records when it was like my birthday or Christmas, or you know, or when I started having my paper route, you know, or if I was mowing lawns or shoveling snow or something." So you know, couldn't always get every record for everyone. But then it was all of a sudden, you know, getting Sabbath and Blackmore's Rainbow and Rush and Yes and then all of a sudden Genesis and King Crimson, and then all of a sudden Devo comes out, and then that opened up a whole other world. And then all of a sudden you got the Damned and
Right.
everything, you know. Then all of a sudden by ninth grade, all of a sudden there's this metal coming out like Iron Maiden and stuff like that. Then I'm also at the same time discovering, you know, I don't know, John Cage, for lack of a better word, you know, and some and you know, and or Albinoni or something, and then or Blind Lemon Jefferson, you know, Charlie Patton, whatever. Just the whole musical landscape just opened. And then when we moved to Holly, I could pick up the station called Brave New Waves, and they had a show called Release the Bats, you know, from like the birthday party song, and they would play like stuff like Nurse with Wound, Current 93, Robin Gustle, Nurse. You know, that's why I first started hearing the noise stuff. And I always like to add, when I got into noise music from that station, one time I went looking for it and I found it, and I'm listening to this piece and it's awesome. I'm like, oh my God, about 45 minutes at an hour. I'm like, I'm going to see what else is on. I had it in between stations. I didn't have it completely on the station. It was new to this noise music, but then that also made me realize, again, it's just this certain attention to sound that can make it quote musical. Just like if all of a sudden when you can hear rain kind of coming on a gutter, that starts becoming this certain kind of a rhythm or something. I know it seems silly,
No, not at
but
all.
that's but it just that thing of about how every sound is, and then, getting your mind going, creativity.
Yeah, I mean, I hear rhythm all the time. I mean, there's
Mhm.
music everywhere,
Yeah, I
all
mean,
the time.
all it is organized sound. Just that the sounds are already there.
Yeah, just being outside, going for a walk, you're hearing music. It can be the wind, it can be birds chirping, it can be a train passing by, with the motion. But it's
It's
all music. I'm sure you know who Charles Ives is.
Oh yeah, Joe's Eyes. I absolutely actually listened to. There's a piece called Starlings on my record, The Carnival Crowd, the beginning piano piece, total rip off of Charles Eyes. I mean,
Cool.
complete. It's called Starlings.
But
Um,
Charles Ives, he was a guy who was pulling sounds from, you know what I mean? Like he was hearing
mhm.
things that we would take for granted. It's like with vision. If you turn off the lights in your room, it's going to be pitch black at first. It's going to be like a black space, but eventually your eyes are going to kind of start seeing things, and you're going to start hearing things. And it's like you're suddenly in a circus in a way, because you're focusing on what you can hear and what you can see. I love things like that,
Yeah,
just finding the things underneath the situation, the grindings of the world under your feet, and you
yeah.
can find music in all those things.
Oh, that's how I write almost the best is from walking, because you're all going to rhythm. Actually, I think still one of the greatest lines in rock and roll, was chewing out a rhythm on my bubble gum. From the Ramones thing. It just kind of reminds because it has that someone walking and chewing gum, and there's this rhythm there. Like it's always said, the creative process is always so much more fun. That's why when the record's done, there's like saying I always say it's just like but it's almost running it out. But that you're a basketball player. It's when you're on the court playing, not when you're posing for the cover of Wheaties. And that's the thing with music. I love writing. I love composing alone, and I love doing it with other people too, especially if everyone's throwing some great ideas around. And I love recording. I love playing shows. I hate writing bios. I, schmoozing. Promotion. I'm shit at promotion. Whatever. It's all those other aspects of being a musician and
Well,
never really appealed to me.
what you need is someone who can write a press release for you now and then, and you'll
Yeah.
love some people. Just.
Oh, I don't want to bug you. You do real professional stuff, man.
Oh,
And
Troy,
you did Obama. You didn't do me.
what's that?
So didn't you? You worked with Obama once, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
Back
cool as hell.
a long time ago. Yeah, I was I got to cover Barack, or Barry as I call him because we're that close now. Yeah, I mean, but look, man, you're one person who, if your number shows up on my phone, I'm always going to answer or I'll get
Thank
back.
you. Very kind. That's good enough.
I've known each other a long time, and we've done stuff together. Where I'm again thrilled that you're a part of the upcoming EP, and we're gonna hopefully move mountains with that thing and get some money together.
Yeah, it'd be nice. It's always nice because I can't really give money for charities, so it's a nice, lend your talents,
Yeah,
and if we get the things for the dogs, that'd be great.
yeah,
I said.
yeah.
So
We.
hopefully it comes out good, and hopefully you like what I do. Hope.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be fun, man. I can't wait to hear what you come up with, man. I mean, I handed you how many tracks? Like 50 something tracks altogether. Like, here you go. Yeah.
I
Bunch
started
of,
going through it though. I know what I said. I've got a couple ideas of three different types of remixes, and we'll just see how it goes. But right now, it's just getting this Wonderland Arcade done, or Penny Fractals and Melting Sand, one of the two. I don't know. That's too long of a title. Then again, when you got something you really like the title, it's you just keep it. I mean, like when I had one for heroically versed in complex ecosystems, and when I wrote this song about that and everything, and then it was just like, well, I wanted that to be the title, and it's just really long. I wanted to be the title of the record too. Like, it's just again, I wonder if there's these like little bad decision lights that go on.
so where can people find your music online?
There's a band camp, which is kind of a cool place. You know, they do a thing like a Bandcamp Friday thing every now and then when the money goes all to the artiste. But also, you know, they don't charge you for putting your music up there. Then there's and I think it's you know, streaming on Spotify and you know, all that stuff, Tidal and everything. I don't know. I never use any of those services, everything. And there's also I have a YouTube channel where I've been I all the visuals I'm working on now the YouTube channel is going to start really building up with a lot of stuff I've been working on over the last year. I just want to get it all together because I should have added this. The songs are all interrelated, hence the visuals will be a continuing thing. So I needed to have the story and the piece all together. I'd have these other ones, and oh, that don't work with it. And so, and I've been wanting to do it like this for a while, but I'll always all of a sudden I'll start and then I'll be like, no, just I get too antsy and just want to kind of do it. That's why like all the last bunch of records are all concept records, but rather loosely, more like they take place in the same multiverse.
And what's the
Sorry
name
if I
of
took so
your
much
YouTube
Marvel.
channel? What's the name of
What was that?
your YouTube channel? What's it called?
Um, Troy Gregory, music and visuals.
Cool.
I gotta come. I don't know. I just put what that's what's going to be there. I should come up with something snappy. I don't know what. But I even had a thing where it says it's weird. You ever have a thing like I got a thing with my name? It's always funny because it's like I'm at where I work. Usually people don't know you're a musician, but then all of a sudden if they find out, they're like, "Oh, what do you play? What's the name of your band?" Roy Gregory. It just doesn't come off the tongue very well, you know. It's like so I'm like, oh, I should have changed it to something snappy for putting out records, and it's like, oh fuck it, who cares?
Well, I'm
That's
gonna
what mom and dad made me, so there you go. It's
I'll
actually
put
supposed
the
to be
links.
enunciated. So like Grigori.
Yeah, Troy Gregory. Yeah, that
Because it
works.
came from Gigoria. That's what my grandfather, when he came home from Romania and came in World War I, they, you know, like mishear people's names, Gregoria, Gregory.
Mm.
There's a thing in Geddy Lee's book who talks about that for his parents and everyone's names changing when they came over from Poland or something, and you know, especially like the every Hebrew names and stuff like that. So they did hear like and they're like, ah, Gary, you know, or something. So
Yeah, that did
that's
happen a lot back then. Yeah.
yeah, so that's it. So ours was because it's on my I have my grandfather's Purple Heart and his Medal of Valor and somebody was shot on the last day of the war. He lived, but you know, he got TB and died a little later and went back at home. My dad wrote this autobiography, brutal account of that whole deal. They could, but would hug with a blanket because they didn't know what the TB, you know, everything, you know, well, up with that. But yeah, he have all. It was like he got it was him and some other soldiers surprised that he got shot in the leg and crawled back to camp and basically got told the war is over. True story. And then like, and my uncle John in World War II, he ended up in the infirmary because he was on patrol in the Philippines, and he's in the last cat in the line of all these other people in this queue, right? And someone at the front of the queue shot at like a hornet's nest the size of like a shed. So by the time my Uncle John got up there, he got stung
Oh,
like a zillion amount of times. I don't know if you ever see my movie World War Love It All, but there's a nod to that with the Annie Rapis, and it talks about being stung all this time, but she had to make her body feel like it's sparkly, and then they all fell off.
that happened to me when I was like 6 years old. I
Mm,
I got stung all over my body by bees. And I was out of school for like a week and a half, 2 weeks.
wow.
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
all I ever had was just spilled some red pop on me at Belle Isle and a couple bees on me, and I'm screaming. But that's nuts. That's terrifying. I actually got stung. Was it last year? I think. I've become addicted to these just soda pops, and like there's ones orange dreams and stuff. I mean, if it's some blue thing, you know, those Jones ones, like you know, birthday cake explosion or whatever. Oh, I gotta have that and everything. But I was drinking. I was sitting on my porch, and I had it, and a bee must have got in there. So I go
Oh,
to take the sip, and then all of a sudden, in my mouth, I'm like, "What the hell?" And then all of a sudden, I get this big, but then I kind of spit out, and then the poor little bee, and I'm like, "Oh fuck," you know, I didn't want to kill the bee, but then all of a sudden, I'm like, "Oh, I still got a stinger. Go feel it." my tongue back here. I still got this stinger in the roof of my mouth. So yeah, he stung me in my mouth, but yeah, sad little guy. Oh
Well,
well.
we started talking about your upcoming album, and we ended on bee stings. I would say this is a typical conversation between us.
Actually, there's a song on Heroically First called I'm in a Beehive on a Dare. Yep. In a Beehive on a Dare. That's the name of that song. So I guess I mean it's still somehow related to the records, I suppose, or I went off on a tangent again.
Hey,
Sorry.
life is art, man. You know, that's what it is. We draw from our experiences subconsciously or otherwise.
Yeah, that would be the thing. It was funny because when I was in the Dirtbombs and we'd be driving and I would say something and Pat McKenna would go, relevance, like I was just saying something ridiculous. And it'd be like, all right, asshole, like 2 miles back there, we saw the sign there for Ruby Falls. And then we saw the thing for Rock City at the other one. I go, whatever. And then, something leads up to something. And that's why I started quoting from, you know, MASH or something. I don't know. And, it's but that word association. But that's the thing also used for songwriting too. Whenever I would teach songwriting, like lyric writing, and stuff like that. One of the first things is play a word association with somebody, where you just say a word and you're not supposed to think about the first thing that comes back, and I would do that with adult students only that I had for songwriting because you do it with them and you don't want all of a sudden just go fuck, and that type of thing because you're not you're not supposed to think about it, and that's that thing of getting on where okay then is that what part of your brain is absolutely up front choosing this analytical choosing your answers or that stuff, and what's the other one that's like no this is the answer anyways regardless of how much you planned it. Yeah, whatever that might be. That's that whole thing of like when you write something that you think is wonderful, but you kind of it just kind of came out. You almost don't want to take credit for it. It just flowed out so easily. Then that's where people then start going, well, it wasn't me. It was, whatever, Santa Claus, Fred Gwynn, whoever that was but but that process is so much fun. But it is the things you've been experiencing and seeing, we really that's all you really know anyway. Hence the fact that the things that come in, you have to put some sort of filter on, definitely, and everything, and just kind of go, well, is that actually really even possible? Like half the shit people just started believing in the last bunch of years too. It's just like, where it's like, okay, for that to actually happen, this, you would have to, all these very unrealistic things, but not looking at logic involved with this. It's just all fear. It's a shame.
Yeah.
But then again, at the same time, there's a lot of people ready to move forward in life. So there you go, and bring everyone along. It's again where that saying of the I always use again too many times a meteor the size of Iowa hitting this planet's taking everyone down, and you don't know what everyone's going through, and like the Ted Lasso, it's better to be curious than to judge, really, because you just don't know with that. But so just it's easy to be kind. I mean, it's more pain in the ass to be not. That's what my mother is very friendly, and so is my dad too. He doesn't talk as much since the stroke, but my mom's very, very friendly, and I picked that up from her. And I think a lot of times in the music industry, especially when I was younger, and then I think a lot of people took advantage of that, screw with you and stuff like that. Whereas you thought everybody could be kind of friendly, then you realize, oh, I'm being fucked with. All right, and
Yeah.
it's so interesting to see look in my life, how many one-sided relationships I've had. I even had one just recently with a guy that lived in the complex here that also took care of the cats. I thought we were friends, and I guess we weren't. And when he moved off and stuff, and I'm trying to call him and tell him about what happened with the other cats that taken care of. But then again, I don't know what's going on in his life. There you
Yeah,
go.
it's hard,
But
man.
yeah,
Especially like social media. I mean, you look at people's feeds and you know, you're kind of looking at their internal publicist. You know what I mean? Not
yeah,
everybody is, because it's all about, oh, we're on vacation or we had this great meal. It's never about, well, sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not about, my piece of shit car broke down 3 times on the way to get to that lunch that I took a photo of and put on Facebook.
yeah.
It's not about I have no money, it's about the other shit. So
I mean, it's like I was into Instagram. I got the thing where it's like I could take a break on it or whatever because again, and it's people I care about and people I like and people I kind of know or I haven't seen in a long time and seen something, but it's such an overload. Like I said, it's like your Professor X and Cerebro broke down. It's like you're getting everybody's like things, and it's just so much, it's such a roller coaster of emotions too. As you're going over and you're seeing a thing about someone helping out some homeless guy on the street or something, or saving some dog on the freeway. And then someone else got married and someone else is having a baby and someone died and or all these different things. And so you got all these different emotions. And it's and it's just I don't know, for me, that's too much. I mean, taking that in, and then you start realizing how much of an empath you actually are, whereas I thought I wasn't.
Yeah.
And you start really kind of feeling this. But then all of a sudden, too, with that Instagram type thing, is you start just getting things that they want you to see. Well, you might like this. So if you just end up looking up one other things, and all of a sudden you're getting like, just celebrities of feeds and stuff like that, and all this other horse shit. And it's just, I mean, I guess, it'd be good for promotion, only in the sense because I don't hang out, I don't do anything, I don't have a lot of friends. You know what I mean? But I've got a lot of online friends,
Yeah.
or some, whatever that means. But then again, at the same time, I mean, there's been positive things that come out of that and stuff. That people wrote you and said something nice, or thing, and when they're going through a hard time, they liked this song or something, or that's great. But but it's like at the same time, again, it's just, whenever I consider when I was a kid watching the Monkees and wanting to be a musician, I didn't kind of consider the thing that most people do, want an adulation, because adulation from it is, I'd rather someone go, that record's great, rather than you're great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then great, what does that mean? And it's just so subjective, and hence the fact of consistently as an artist, constantly progressing. And then you don't have to worry, you don't worry about shit like AI or any of things, or even what anyone really thinks about it and stuff. But I would do think, if I'm putting something out in the world, I'd like it to be something that is at least somehow positive in a way, that for somebody, and inspirational in a way. I guess that's what we're looking for. Something, or something like, oh, that was time well spent at that concert, or listening to that music or whatever. And especially when you don't. I mean, you're not mailing in everything I do. Even when I was saying was just getting just a moment and just kind of grabbing it. That moment still was very important. I don't want to ever put on anything that is just, you know, and that's one thing too, where a lot of times for certain songs or certain records or certain bands, where someone say, well, why don't you play stuff from that, or do anything, or have a problem maybe talking about that group, because it's not necessarily the group, it's something was going on at that time of your life, or how you were as a person. So say bringing up Flotsam and Jetsam, I don't got a thing with them. I've realized I've always been projecting as this what an idiot I was when I was in that band. And the stupid things I did, where these guys were really into this group. I was a, you know, camp nut house, more than anything with that. And I'm just saying, so it's those things. And even with Prong, I start thinking about the things I was doing at the time more than you're playing on stage and recording. That stuff is fine. There's all the other things, and stuff. But just remembering again all those other kind of things that were happening there. So it's not always just the band, it's like, oh no, that relates to the city we're living in and the people you knew at the time and what type of person you were at the time and what was going on and everything. And definitely for both those bands, because when I joined Flats, and the person that joined and the person that quit are two different people and stuff. Because when I joined that band, I was still very much philosophically kind of very Judeo-Christian. And I lost that completely, from them. And that's an interesting thing to lose that to, intellectually or whatever, just naturally kind of come to that thing. All of a sudden, silence. You know what I mean? And it was just, and then there was a lot of other things going on around that time. First time I had a very, very serious relationship. And then also time my uncle died around that time. And, first kind of very close family death and all this other things. And growing up, living on your own, I lived in my bedroom throughout high school and stuff like that. I didn't go out on dates. I didn't do shit like that. And then started, playing clubs, and stuff. And then when I went to Musicians Institute, studying, I would go out and screw around with friends and stuff, but it was so a lot of ways how people were in college, when you always hear about people's college things and them being nutty and doing stuff like that and being kind of loose and silly and adolescent. That was when I was in Flotsam and Prong. That was my college.
Mm.
That was that year. And it's perfect time, age too. I was 20 when I joined. I turned 21 about a month or two after I joined that band and everything. So it's, and that was fun. It was fun being in that group, and it was fun playing those shows and things like that. I was just still discovering myself and realizing what it is I want to do. And even between Flotsam and Prong, there was a lot going on then too, because I reacquainted myself with Matt Smith and started working with him on stuff that would eventually become Outrageous Charitable Beats and the Witches
Mm.
and everything, and just before Prong. So I think even having that just too is that thing of discovering, wow, I can write, I can compose. And I found that when I that what I would really like in composing wasn't working for any of the groups that I was in. You know what I mean? And then it's just this whole thing, am I gonna stick with this? If and then like the Prong thing, again, I said we over toured the group. Everyone had their own like little personal issues. And there you go with that group. But I'm fine. Again, the way things work out and things where we are and where we're going, I'm cool with it. You have your faculties to do what it is that you need to do with your life. And those are things that and what you can control and the stuff that you can. So
Absolutely.
for the stuff I could control and for my home and my nearest vicinity, it's a joyful, happy, peaceful place. Where everyone and anyone's invited unless you're gonna cause shit. And there you go. And that's nice having that, that type of thing. And I've also found that for me doing music, if I do meet people who like the stuff that I do, the thing that because I haven't set myself up on some kind of thing very accessible and not played that kind of role, that there's people that know that and that know that I am someone you can come up and just talk to, and it's no big deal. I won't say who it is, but it was a guy from a certain metal band one time when we was on tour, and I was out, all the bands that were on tour together were hanging out. And he came up to me because I was hanging out with some people I just met. We were having fun and we are being silly. And he comes and tells me, you better watch me. You better watch your man now. He's like, he's telling me this magazine, this guy from this magazine's here, this guy from this metal magazine, the guy from Metal Hammer's here, the guy from Kerrang and shit. These guys were watching. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like this whole idea, I gotta watch, like I'm putting on this public persona for everybody. I mean, think about it. Why can somebody like Peter Gabriel can walk on, I saw him walk on the chairs all the way to the back of the club or the venue and then back twice. And I saw him like do that. I don't know if he still does it for a song, Lay Your Hands on Me. He does this Jesus thing. Now, someone like, I don't know, let's pick up the huge artists right now. I mean, even someone like Madonna couldn't walk out in that audience and do the same thing unsupervised. She would get ripped apart by the people who love her.
Right.
That's the weird thing about fanaticism. You think about that. If Beyonce went out into her crowd, she's not coming back, man. Or she does, she's going to be like, I'm never doing that again. I mean, I even maybe some metal crowds. I think if James Hetfield walked out in this crowd, they'd beat the shit out of him. They would jump him or something, or just want to get a piece, or like in the Monkeys movie you had, and they rip them all apart or something. And there's just something to be said that where it's just the thing, if you've created between the people that you hope to listen to your music and yourself more of a relationship rather than just transactional thing. You're the fan, and I'm the guy that you're supposed to be thinking is so wonderful, and it's a bunch of crap. And so I like to think, because usually when I do meet people, I don't get that type of thing with that, because I've never had that. And if I, I mean, it's just like, it's strange because sometimes you would get like, and the guy was really drunk, came and dropped in front of me. I cannot believe I'm talking to the Troy Gregory. Oh my God, you want a God? Oh my God, I got on the base. You know, what's going on and everything. And I had this horrible stomach ache. And I was tired and I wanted to call my wife. But I had this horrible stomach ache. And I kind of want to get back to the hotel. But hearing someone doing that, you just kind of like, oh God, go and just talk. And then, find out about that person. What's up with you? You
Yeah.
know, type of thing. And guys like the Residents got it right, wearing the eyeballs, or King Diamond doing the makeup. You know what I mean? That you could do that. But, fortunately, I'm not mega famous. So, hey,
Well,
that's good.
I
Nick Mason's got the best job. He's famous as fuck. And no one knows what he looks like. Really, you can walk around his crowd. I'm just saying this. Maybe they do. When his records sell, you can buy his wife something nice for Christmas.
yeah. Well, I mean, look, I was talking to somebody once who had a bit of fame at one point, like fame. And,
Mm-hmm.
he talked about kind of how uncomfortable he was being the guy who people were fawning over, because he's always like, he would jokingly say, I'm a piece of shit. What, who am I? And, we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about the fact that a fan will come up to somebody and think to themselves, don't say something stupid. Don't say something stupid. Well, here's the news flash, guys. The musician you're talking to, the rock star, some of the time is thinking to themselves, don't say something stupid. Don't say something stupid. You know what I mean? It's like, I,
Well,
there's no division there. We're all just people.
what's funny because I think about, well, when I've gone and made bands and stuff, because my brother and I used to do it all the time. When we went to go see a band, we bought our records to get signed in King Crimson. Met Tony Levin and Bill Bruford and Adrian Ballou. My one friend actually went to try to get Fripp's autograph. We knew better not to even try. And Steve Hackett, and he sat out and talked to us. Well, Chris Squire, I got to meet twice, and asking all these little bass questions and stuff. And it was just super nice to me. And then, like, even I actually, one of the first close celebrities I met was Bob Hope. When my family was on vacation in DC and was at a restaurant, and I walked by and I go, hi, and he goes, hi, and stuff. And Rod McEwen, he was signing autographs at this bookstore, and my mom went to go get it, and I didn't know who he was at the time, the poet. Rod McEwen's autograph, but then the whole thing with autographs. I mean, like going to Disney World as a kid, you get Donald Duck's autograph and stuff like that. That was kind of cool. But when I got older, I kind of we just only got to get on the records, and it wasn't to make them worth more or something.
Right.
There was no eBay. That was Todd, because he saved his money well and worked more. He always had his records signed. But we meet everybody. Steve Harris. I wore my Genesis Nursery Crime shirt because I knew he liked Genesis. And of course he brought it up. He goes, "Oh, that's a great album." And got to talking with Steve Harris about the bass and Genesis, great band, great band. And so I go meet them. But then when I was a little older, it was, I still had that for a couple things. Like one time I was at the bar, and all of a sudden I just kept turning around. It was Alan Vega,
Hmm.
and then I'm like, it was at CB's actually, and then finally I started talking to him, and I introduced myself, and he heard of Prong, was in Prong at the time. I don't know if I brought that up with some sort of insecurity to seem like I'm legit, whatever that means, or some sort of crap. But I know I did that, and I was awkward like a kid. But then I told him I've always wanted to cover Reign of Ruin. I would love to cover Reign of Ruin, and I told him how I kind of would do it and everything like this. And he goes, "You want a beer?" And he gives me a beer and stuff like this. And we do a beer and everything. We just talk about other things. All of a sudden, like we had this beer and a shot. Then he was gonna go see somebody. He goes, "Tell you what," he goes, "You do Reign of Ruin, you got my blessing." And he gave me a little pat on the shoulder. That was kind of cool. And then Diamanda Galas, there
Hmm.
was an AIDS benefit put at the Howie party. You can find it. It's online. It's on MTV. I don't think the whole show is, but it was the Butthole Surfers, Soul Asylum, Prong, and Diamanda, and it was hosted by Fred Schneider, B-52s, and Ice T. And around that time, Ice T was really into Prong. It was funny because I came up and I'm like, my name is Troy. He goes, "I know you all. I saw you getting busy up there." But it was like, and it's funny thing was I was in line to get beer, and Fred Schneider was in front of me, and I finally same thing. I just got to tell you, man, when that first record came out, this guitar on that, and just you know, it's so great and stuff like that. And he goes, I really like your band. And so I got the Fred Schneider response, and that was cool. But the thing is, for that thing, a friend said the woman was putting together. She said you can meet up with Diamanda, and so we met up out in front of CB's, and then we decided to go to the Mars Bar instead of going in there and talked. And God, I tell you, I just felt like a 12-year-old hanging around with like this like older goddess. So just I'm so insecure. It was like, you know, it was like Charlie Brown with Churro Santana. And it was like, but you know, and talking, we had a great conversation, and then she had me walk her back to her place, which was kind of funny because if anyone attacked us, she would kick their ass more than I could. But that was really cool. But I was just so nervous all night. I mean, it wasn't like a date or anything, obviously, you know, but just, you know, meeting her as an artist because I loved her music so much. That Plague Mass thing was just so wonderful. Yeah, so at the same time when I, you know, because I would go meet people and stuff. That was like with Flotsam or English bands. If I'd see people out with records, you know, fans, I would give the backstage passes. That would always piss off the road crew. Flotsam's road crew fucking hated me for that because they wanted the road passes for girls. For girls, you know. And I'm like, oh, I'm giving the people who are actually buying their albums, you know. But just always that thing of being nice, letting people, anyone Killing Joke, you know, just Killing Joke, you know, anyone can come in really if the club isn't trying to put a kibosh on it. But just that thing, it was fun to meet people like that, and when they were kind. I mean, I would with Billy Sheehan, you know, you know, bass players, and you know, so I would go see him with his band Talus. It wasn't so much in the band, but his playing, and he stood outside in the rain and talked to me. You know, I was like 16 or 17, and so you don't forget that. And, you know, I was told if I'm ever in this position myself, you know, do something and be kind and be nice. And it's always nice to do that, or just let people in for free and stuff like that. Yeah.
Excellent. Troy, you and I can go off for another 2 hours, but we're going to have to do that in a part two sometime in the
All
future.
right. We'll
Uh,
have to help. Hopefully, the record will be out then, and the remixes.
yeah, we'll reconnect when the album comes out. We'll do another one of these for sure. But in the meantime, I'll put your links up in the video description for your music, your Bandcamp, your YouTube.
Thank you.
People can
I
check
hope
it
people
out.
listen.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm glad we're able to connect. It's always a lot of fun, man.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it so much, Joe.
Absolutely, man. We'll do this again soon.
That was good.
Excellent, dude. Take care.